All right, so we're going to attack problem number 1, and the first place to start is in Visual Studio, so here we are. We'll start new project, or you can do file new project, which is going off my screen, but there it is. And then we'll choose Visual C#, we'll choose a console application, and we'll give it a solution name. And this solution name I'm going to give it is message, oops, I'm going to capitalize that, message display. And the best thing to do is for your solution, we're going to write app. So a solution name is good to apply app for application. This is the message display application. Notice where I save it, so I know where to find it if I need to find that .cs file. And then browse if you need to change the directory. Make sure I have create directory for solution selected, so that way I have a folder that's created for my solution, and click on OK. Perfect. So the first thing I'm given is C# has everything is set up for me. Visual Studio has been very nice about that to get me started. I have a main method, and the main method has to be in every C# application only once, because this is where this application is going to begin. This is its starting point. We have one class. Our class is named program, and class will have more meaning to you very soon as we move along. I have some extra using statements that I don't need, so I'm going to get rid of those. I always need to have the system library, system namespace. Got a little Java mixed in there, so system namespace, and we're also going to use static system.console so that I don't have to keep typing in read system.console.read key or console.read key. It'll just be available. We'll talk about that as we move along. Okay, so now I'm in this method, my main method, and I'm going to declare my variables. So I'm going to declare my strings. I'm going to put those on the same indentation, favorite expression. So you can create a single, as long as this declaration type, this data type is the same, name and favorite expression are both strings. I can declare them both by separating them with a comma, but it's good practice to put them each on a separate line because it's more readable than if I'd put them all on a single line. You could also, instead of putting the comma after name, put a semicolon and write string, favorite expression, semicolon, whichever you prefer is fine. Okay, so the first thing that we're asked to do is to display some instructions. So I'm going to create a method that displays the instructions. Okay, so I'm not actually creating the method here, I'm just calling the method, which I haven't written yet. And because I haven't written it yet, Visual Studio is giving me these curly underlined red underlining to let me know that there seems to be an error here. I can't find a method called display instructions. So we're going to write that. I also want to point out that in C# it's considered good programming practice to use Pascal casing when we are creating our methods. In other words, the D is capital and the I is capital. So in Pascal casing, we can put two words together. Remember, we don't have spaces in between our variable names. And then the first letters of each word is then capitalized. So now I have to write this method. So I'm going to write the method outside of, this is a method, main is a method, so I need to create a new method. And we see the word static used. I'm just going to write this out because I can't talk and type at the same time. Okay. So let's look and see what we've done. Static is going to have more meaning as we move along, but for now what static is saying is it's a way for us within this class to find this method that the method doesn't exist in the main. So we can just say find that display instructions, and because we have static here, it knows where to find it. If you leave static out, you'll get an error because the compiler won't know where to find it. If we put the word static, and that's kind of a loose definition for now, but it'll have more meaning as we start to get into some of the next chapters and we actually learn about creating classes and instances of objects. But for now, let's just say I need to put the word static in this program class in order for me to call a method outside of my main method. Okay, and then the word void says, once I'm finished with this method, once the compiler's done executing these lines, nothing is going to get returned back to whoever called it. So it's just going to do some work, and then it'll return back to the calling method. So that's why there's a void here. I'm just going to copy and paste some of the code in so I don't spend time writing it all here. So it's just basically some write line. There's some instructions, write line. Read key, as you know, waits for the user to respond, and you can see a command there that says, when you're ready to begin, press any key. We wait for the key, and then the clear method just clears the screen and moves on. So we're looking good so far. Let's just save that, and we can run it. So by clicking on Start, it'll automatically save all of that for me. And we should see some instructions. Move that over so you can see it. There we go. When you're ready to begin, press any key. And we return back. We can't see the clear working yet, but you will be able to see that very soon. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to get the name from the user. So I'm going to just type for the moment name. I'm going to create a method. I can tell that it's a method. I can see that that's a capital G, so I'm using Pascal case. I'm going to call that new method get input value, and I'm going to send it an argument. I'm going to send it the word name, which is a literal string. Means literally that's what I'm going to send to this new method. So now we need to create that method, and we'll start a new method here. So make sure you include it after the closing braces here. So I'm going to create a new method. We're going to again start with the word static. This particular method is going to return something. It's going to return a string. Get input value. It's also receiving a string. And we're going to give it a parameter variable name. I'm going to give it which value. So what's happening here is when this method gets called, it sends a string name into this parameter. Name goes into this variable, which value. Once data is done processing, once the compiler is done executing the instructions here in this method, a string is going to be returned to whoever called it, and that string is going to be put into this string variable. So recognize we have to be very careful to adhere to that string guideline that we're setting up for ourselves. Okay. So let's see what goes into our get input. Again, I'm just going to copy and paste code to save time that I have on a hidden screen here. And so what's going on here? So now we are creating a variable that's available just to this method. So once I leave get input value, this input value variable will no longer be available to me. We're going to write something to the screen. Okay. We're going to take whatever was in which value, in this case the word name. We've got it formatted here, so which value name goes here in the sentence. We're going to get input from the user, and whatever they input goes into this variable, which was local, and then we're going to return that value. We're going to return whatever string was entered back to the calling method, which is going to go into the name variable. Now this is an example of what the book called passing values by value. So a copy of that input value, even though sorry for tripping on myself there, even though input value is a local variable, it's only available within this method, we're passing the value of whatever was entered by the user back to name. So input value, the variable itself, no longer is available, but the string got passed to name. Okay, so let's see that work. So I'm going to click on Start, Notice that I have some green lines before I hit on start, so those things were saved prior. Yellow are my new changes. All this green line, just kind of a side note because I happen to see it, the green line is saying there's a variable that was declared but it's not currently used. So I know I'm going to be using it soon. I'm not worried about that. And then I have the yellow, which says these are unsaved changes so far. When I click on start, all of those will be saved. We'll compile and then hopefully get a console screen. So there we go. There it is. So there's our set of instructions that was being called from our method, display instructions. So I'm just highlighting here. There's the display instructions. And it came down here, ran this method. Everything was happy. So we're sitting here on the read key. When I press the button, clear is going to clear the screen and going to be returned back to our calling method, which should then call the next method. So let's see if that works. Perfect. Okay. So now get input value is being called. It sent the literal name. And so let's see if I can be clever here. Let's make that a little bit smaller. And so we can see that name was sent to which value. Right, please enter your name. And now we're sitting here on this input read line. Oh, I lost my little console app there for you. There we go. Now we're sitting on input value read line, so we're waiting for a name. So we'll type in, and it'll sit there until we type the enter key. Once I type the enter key or press the enter key, here, my name is going to be, let's see what happens here. I'm going to disappear. But what happened then was my name got put into this variable, which then got returned as a string. Return that string back to whoever called it. And now that name, a copy, so that actual string was sent into name. Input value is no longer available. In other words, if I tried to write here, write input value, I would get an error message. Write input value, because it can't find it anymore. See the red? It says, I don't know where input value is. Oh, I lost everything there. Okay, because it's that input, that variable is no longer available to me. But what is available is it input value. This method literally sent Kirsten Markley back to name. So I'm going to get rid of my error. Hopefully that's clear. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is have our user enter a expression, a favorite expression. Again, I'm just going to copy and paste some code here to make things a little quicker. And what I'll do here is I'm going to use that same method, because that method is still doing the same thing. The only thing that's changing is what I'm asking my user for. Everything else is still the same. I'm still writing this same line. The only thing that's changing is my favorite saying. I'm still going to get input, and that input is still going to be returned. This is very good coding because I don't have to replicate code. I can use the same code to do the same thing with one little variant. So anytime you can write a method, and that's the point of methods, is to prevent you from writing repetitive code. So instead of writing a whole nother method that is asking for the user's favorite saying, since the steps are all the same with one small change, it's best to reuse that same method. So you want to write that method as best you can to keep it as versatile as possible. So now all that's happening is, instead of this method asking what is your name, it's asking for the favorite saying, and what's going to be returned is going to be put into favorite expression. So now, using the same method, I have name and I have a value in favorite expression. Okay, so we're looking good so far. Only thing left now is to display that. So again, I'm just going to copy and paste to save time, and then I'll explain what I've done. Plus, I'm not super good at typing on the keyboard here while I'm talking. So now I've created I will create a method called display name and saying, and I'm sending it 2 arguments. I'm suggesting that we send in whatever value we now have in name, and whatever value we now have in favorite expression. Both of those two values are being sent by value, in other words, a copy and paste situation. Copy those values into display name and saying and do something with it. So now I guess we have to write that method, because that red squiggly line here is saying you don't have that method. So again, we're going to start off with static. We're not returning anything. We're simply going to display something. Put the method name in. It has to match display name and saying. And it has to receive. I'm sending it to arguments, so I have to make sure that they match. So I need two parameters in here. And so I'm going to be receiving string name, and I'm also going to receive a string favorite expression. This is ION, and there we go. All right, so now I've created a new method. I could probably make this go away so it's a little bit more easy to see. There we go. And again, for brevity of time, I'm just going to copy and paste that information in. Perfect. Okay, oh, looks like I'm missing a word here. Part of that word I missed. There we go. Good coding practice. Say that those are all in the same line. And it's giving me the red squiggly line because it's saying, I don't understand lowercase c, but I do understand uppercase c. So now we're not returning anything. We're simply printing something out. Clear the screen and write the information that this method received. So here's our format string. In this location, we're going to put name, whatever received from name. And in this location, we're going to put in whatever we received in favorite expression. So that all should work just fine. And then after that happens, we're going to return back to our line that called. We're going to wait until somebody enters a key, and then main is now completed, and so the application will close. So let's run that. Oh, I have a build error. So let's look at the build error. Whoops, that's a good thing to pay attention to. What is my build error? I'm going to click on no, and it's telling me that on line 48 I have an error. So let's look at line 48. So it looks like when I copied things over that I copied too many of my closing braces. So let's delete the error ones. So I probably need one more there. Got rid of my squiggly line. Perfect. Now let's run it again. Okay. So there's my directions when I'm ready to begin. Enter my name. I'm just going to put my first name. My favorite saying, I'm a Paloha, because that's pretty darn quick. And there you go. Hit enter. My main program ends. Execution ends. So hopefully that helps reiterate some of the points that were touched on in this chapter. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to email me.